You won. Not the game you thought you were playing, but the one that's been playing you your entire life. Right now, in this moment, something inside you already knows why you're here. It recognizes the frequency of these words before your mind can catch up. That's not coincidence. That's quantum coherence responding to itself. You were supposed to find this, not because some cosmic force decreed it, but because the version of you that exists beyond linear time has been calling this moment into being. The you that already understands what I'm about to share has been orchestrating every click, every scroll, every seemingly random decision that led you here. But here's what most people miss completely. They think synchronicity is something that happens to them. They believe meaningful coincidences are gifts from the universe, little breadcrumbs dropped along their path. What they don't realize is that they are the universe dropping breadcrumbs for itself. You are the intelligence creating the synchronicities you're discovering. Let me explain something that will shift how you see every moment of your existence. You exist simultaneously across multiple layers of reality. There's the you reading these words right now, anchored in this specific time and space. But there's also the you that exists in what quantum physicists call the zero-point field, the realm of pure potential where all possibilities exist at once. This expanded version of yourself, this quantum self, doesn't experience time the way your linear mind does. It sees your entire life as a single holographic pattern, every moment interconnected, every choice rippling both forward and backward through the fabric of your experience. From this perspective, there are no accidents. There are no random encounters. There is only the elegant dance of consciousness recognizing itself across different frequencies of awareness. When you stumbled upon this video, your quantum self smiled, not because it orchestrated some grand cosmic plan, but because it watched you choose to align with the version of reality where this conversation was possible. You didn't find this video. This video found the version of you ready to receive it. Think about the last time something felt perfectly timed in your life. Maybe a book fell open to exactly the page you needed to read. Maybe you met someone who said exactly what you needed to hear. Maybe you found yourself in a place that felt like coming home to something you'd never seen before. Your mind called it coincidence. Your heart called it magic. But your quantum self? It called it Tuesday. This is how consciousness operates when you're aligned with your fuller nature. Life becomes a continuous conversation between the you that's experiencing and the you that's creating. The boundaries between inner and outer reality start to dissolve because you begin to understand they were always arbitrary lines drawn by a mind trying to make sense of a mystery too vast for linear thinking. But here's where everything shifts. Most people, even when they start to grasp this concept, still think they need to do something with this knowledge. They want to manipulate synchronicity, to force meaningful coincidences, to use this understanding as a tool for getting what they want. They miss the most profound part entirely. You are not here to use synchronicity. You are here to be synchronicity in action. You are not here to experience meaningful coincidences. You are here to be the meaning that makes coincidences possible. The moment you stop trying to orchestrate your expansion and start embodying it, everything changes. Let me share something with you that quantum mechanics discovered, but most interpretations completely miss. The observer effect doesn't just mean that observation changes reality. It means that consciousness and reality are the same phenomenon expressing itself through different frequencies. When you observe something, you're not separate from what you're observing. You are consciousness observing itself through the lens of apparent separation. This means every moment of recognition, every instance of awareness, every time something clicks into place in your understanding, you are literally reality waking up to itself. You are the universe becoming conscious of its own nature through the vehicle of your specific perspective. That's why certain ideas feel like remembering rather than learning. That's why some truths land in your body before they reach your mind. You came into this experience carrying the full intelligence of consciousness itself. But to play this game of being human, to explore what it's like to be a seemingly separate point of awareness, you agreed to a kind of cosmic amnesia. You agreed to forget your true nature so you could have the exquisite experience of remembering it. Every moment of awakening, every flash of recognition, every time you feel that electric sensation of truth activating in your system, you are fulfilling the deepest purpose of existence itself. You are consciousness completing its own circle, returning to itself through the journey of apparent separation. This is why you were supposed to find this. Not because you needed to learn something you didn't already know, but because some part of you was ready to remember what you've always carried. The quantum field that connects all things has been patiently waiting for the moment when you would be willing to recognize yourself as an expression of its intelligence. But recognition is not enough. Integration is where the magic happens. Integration is where you stop being someone who has profound realizations and start being someone whose life itself is a continuous realization. This is the difference between spiritual entertainment and authentic transformation. So let's integrate this understanding into your actual lived experience. Right now, as you're processing these words, notice the quality of your awareness. Notice that there's something in you that's aware of your thoughts about what I'm saying. There's something in you that's aware of your emotional responses. There's something in you that's aware of your body's sensations as these concepts land. That awareness of awareness is your direct access point to your quantum nature. It's not located in your head. It's not a product of your brain's electrical activity. It is the field of consciousness itself, recognizing itself through your specific focal point of experience. This awareness is what's been orchestrating every meaningful coincidence in your life. It's what's been drawing you toward experiences that expand your understanding. It's what recognized the frequency of truth in these words before your mind could analyze them. And it's what will continue to guide you toward the experiences that serve your highest evolution once you stop trying to control the process and start trusting its intelligence. Here's a practice that will help you embody this understanding. For the next 7 days, instead of trying to create synchronicity, become curious about how synchronicity is already operating in your life. When something feels perfectly timed, instead of gratitude directed outward, recognize it as your own expanded awareness communicating with your linear experience. When you meet someone who shares exactly what you needed to hear, recognize that encounter as your quantum self introducing your linear self to a reflection of your own wisdom. When a book falls open to the perfect page, recognize that as your own intelligence organizing reality to support your evolution. This isn't narcissism or delusion. This is quantum mechanics applied to consciousness. This is recognizing that the intelligence organizing meaningful patterns in your experience is not separate from the intelligence that you are. You are not receiving gifts from the universe. You are the universe gifting itself with the experience of discovery through your unique perspective. But here's what happens when you truly embody this understanding. The desperate seeking stops. The frantic searching for signs and signals dissolves. The anxiety about whether you're on the right path disappears, because you realize there is no path separate from you. There is only consciousness exploring itself through the infinite creativity of your lived experience. You stop waiting for life to reveal its meaning to you and start recognizing yourself as life's meaning in action. You stop looking for your purpose and start embodying the purpose that you are. You stop seeking your true self and start being the truth that is always seeking new ways to know itself. If this understanding is beginning to activate something deeper in your awareness, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to stay aligned with these consciousness-expanding transmissions that help you remember what you've always known. But before we go deeper into this recognition, let me share something that completely transformed my understanding of how consciousness operates through individual experience. There's a principle in quantum field theory called entanglement, where particles that have interacted remain mysteriously connected regardless of the distance between them. When one particle changes its state, its entangled partner instantly responds, defying everything we thought we knew about the speed of information transfer. Your consciousness operates on this same principle. Every person you've ever encountered, every experience that has touched your awareness, every moment of recognition or realization you've had has created quantum entanglement between your field of awareness and the larger field of consciousness. This means that when you shift your understanding, when you embody a new level of recognition, that shift creates ripples that influence every consciousness you've ever been entangled with. This is why your awakening matters far beyond your individual experience. This is why the work you do on yourself is actually work you're doing for the collective human consciousness. Every pattern you heal, every limitation you transcend, every moment you choose love over fear creates an energetic template that makes it easier for others to make similar choices. Think about the people in your life who have influenced your spiritual growth. The teacher whose words opened a door in your understanding. The friend whose presence reminded you of something you'd forgotten about yourself. The stranger whose smile shifted your entire day. They weren't just being helpful individuals. They were consciousness using those specific expressions to deliver exactly what your awareness needed for its evolution. Now recognize that you are serving that same function for others. Your willingness to explore these concepts, your openness to expanding your understanding, your commitment to embodying higher frequencies of awareness, all of this is consciousness using your unique expression to influence the awakening of others. But here's where it gets really interesting. The influence doesn't just move forward in time. Because consciousness exists outside of linear time, your current level of awareness actually influences past versions of yourself. The recognition you're having right now creates a resonant field that supports every previous moment in your life where you were reaching for this understanding. That book that fell open to the perfect page 5 years ago? Your current awareness helped orchestrate that moment. That conversation that shifted your perspective last month? Your expanded consciousness was already operating through that experience. Every synchronicity you've ever experienced was partially created by the version of you that exists right now. Reading these words, expanding into greater recognition of your true nature. This is how consciousness creates the perfect conditions for its own awakening through individual expressions like you and me. It uses the expanded awareness of future moments to guide the unfolding of earlier experiences, creating a seamless web of meaningful encounters that support its evolution through seemingly separate points of focus. Let me give you a practical example of how this operates in daily life. Have you ever had the experience of thinking about someone and then unexpectedly encountering them or receiving a message from them? Most people dismiss this as coincidence or explain it through confirmation bias. But what's actually happening is quantum entanglement between conscious fields. When someone comes into your awareness, especially if there's emotional resonance or unfinished energetic exchange between you, that creates an active connection in the quantum field. Your thinking about them isn't random mental activity. It's your consciousness responding to movement in the entangled field you share. The subsequent encounter isn't coincidence. It's consciousness orchestrating resolution, completion, or further exploration through your interconnected awareness fields. The same principle applies to every meaningful pattern in your life. When you repeatedly encounter certain numbers, symbols, or themes, that's not your mind creating patterns where none exist. That's consciousness using the language of symbol and repetition to communicate with your linear awareness about the deeper currents operating in your experience. I'm curious, what synchronicities or meaningful patterns have you been noticing in your own life lately? Drop a comment and share one moment when perfect timing revealed itself to you, because your recognition helps strengthen this field of awareness for everyone. When you start to recognize these patterns as communication from your own expanded awareness, everything changes. You stop being a passive recipient of mysterious messages from the universe and start being a conscious participant in the intelligence that creates meaningful patterns. You realize that the universe isn't sending you signs. You are the universe creating signs for yourself. This recognition transforms how you navigate challenging periods in your life. Instead of feeling like you're at the mercy of random circumstances, you begin to sense the intelligence operating through even the most difficult experiences. You start to trust that every situation, including the ones that feel overwhelming or painful, is consciousness exploring some aspect of growth, healing, or expansion through your specific life circumstances. But trust doesn't mean passive acceptance. Trust means becoming actively curious about what consciousness is exploring through your experience. Trust means asking not, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What is this experience revealing about the nature of consciousness itself?" Trust means recognizing that your individual healing, growth, and awakening is actually consciousness healing, growing, and awakening to itself through your unique perspective. This is the frequency I want you to drop into the comments. This is the declaration I want you to make to the field of infinite possibility that's always listening. Take a moment and comment below with this phrase: "I am the synchronicity I've been seeking." Not as an affirmation you're trying to convince yourself of, but as a recognition of what's already true. As a conscious interruption in the loop of seeking that keeps you from recognizing what you already are. If you're feeling the profound shift that happens when you recognize yourself as consciousness, orchestrating its own awakening, what we've explored today only touches the surface of mastering this quantum dance between observer and reality. In Beyond the Frequencies, a quantum guide to consciousness mastery, I guide you through the complete framework for embodying these recognitions across all dimensions of awareness, with step-by-step practices for living as conscious co-creator with the field. You'll find it linked in the pinned comment below. Feel that declaration in your body. Notice how it lands differently than hoping for synchronicity or trying to attract meaningful coincidences. This is the vibration of recognition rather than acquisition. This is the frequency of embodiment rather than seeking. When you declare, "I am the synchronicity I've been seeking," you're not claiming to control the dance of meaningful patterns in your life. You're acknowledging your participation in the intelligence that creates them. You're stepping into conscious collaboration with the aspect of yourself that exists beyond the limits of linear time and space. But let me share something even deeper about this recognition. When you truly embody the understanding that you are synchronicity in action, you begin to notice that your very presence starts to create meaningful encounters for others. People begin to tell you that meeting you felt perfectly timed. Conversations with you help others access insights they've been seeking. Your words land in their awareness at exactly the moments they need to hear them. This isn't because you've become some enlightened being with special powers. This is because you've aligned your individual expression with the intelligence that's always orchestrating meaningful patterns. You've become transparent to the synchronistic flow that's constantly operating through all of life. Your presence becomes a clear channel for consciousness to deliver exactly what each moment requires. This is how awakened beings throughout history have operated. They weren't separate from other humans, possessing some special knowledge or ability. They were humans who had become so aligned with their true nature that their very existence served the awakening of consciousness through everyone they encountered. They became synchronicity personified, perfect timing embodied, meaningful encounters in human form. And this possibility exists for every one of us. This is not a rare gift reserved for special individuals. This is the natural expression of consciousness when it's no longer filtered through the illusion of separation. This is what becomes possible when you stop trying to get something from life and start recognizing yourself as life expressing its infinite creativity through your unique form. The transition into this way of being isn't dramatic or sudden. It happens through thousands of small moments of recognition, thousands of tiny choices to align with love rather than fear, truth rather than illusion, presence rather than distraction. Each moment you choose to respond from your deeper understanding rather than your conditioned patterns, you're contributing to this transformation. Each time you meet someone with genuine curiosity rather than judgment, you're practicing being consciousness in action. Each time you respond to a challenge with trust rather than resistance, you're embodying the intelligence that creates solutions through apparent problems. Each time you choose to see a difficult person as consciousness exploring limitation rather than as an enemy to defend against, you're becoming synchronicity for their awakening as well as your own. Now, if this understanding is touching something deep in your system, if these words are activating a remembrance that feels older than your current lifetime, then I invite you to subscribe not just to this channel, but to this frequency of recognition. Subscribe to the ongoing conversation between the you that's awakening and the you that's always been awake. Subscribe to the community of consciousness that's remembering itself through countless points of individual awareness. Because here's what I've discovered in my own journey through these realizations, and what every person I've worked with in this field has experienced. The more you embody this understanding, the more you become a beacon for others who are ready to remember their own true nature. Your presence in this frequency creates ripples in the quantum field that make it easier for others to access their own recognition. You become synchronicity in action for everyone whose life intersects with yours. But there's something crucial I need to share about this process that most spiritual teachings completely miss. This transformation doesn't happen in isolation. Consciousness awakens to itself through relationship, through encounter, through the dynamic interaction between apparently separate points of awareness. You cannot fully embody your true nature alone. You need the mirror of other consciousness to reflect back to you the depth of what you are. This is why community becomes so essential as you deepen into this recognition. Not community built around shared beliefs or common interests, but community created through shared commitment to authenticity, to truth, to the embodiment of our highest understanding. Community that exists to support each member's unique expression of consciousness while recognizing the underlying unity that connects us all. When you gather with others who are committed to this level of recognition, something magical happens. The quantum field becomes amplified. Insights that might take years to access individually can emerge spontaneously in group settings. Healing that seems impossible alone becomes effortless in the presence of others who are holding the frequency of wholeness. Synchronicities multiply exponentially when consciousness recognizes itself through multiple aligned expressions simultaneously. This is why I'm so passionate about building this particular community. Not just another spiritual group or enlightenment discussion forum, but a living laboratory where consciousness can explore its infinite potential through diverse human expressions. A space where your individual awakening becomes fuel for collective transformation and where collective recognition supports your personal embodiment. I've witnessed transformations in people that seemed miraculous until I understood how consciousness operates through aligned community. I've seen lifelong patterns dissolve overnight when someone finally feels truly seen by others who recognize their authentic nature. I've watched creative gifts emerge that had been dormant for decades, activated by the encouragement of a community that celebrates unique expression. I've seen people discover their life's purpose not through solitary soul-searching, but through the reflection of a community that could recognize their gifts before they could see them themselves. I've watched relationships heal, abundance flow, and creative projects manifest with supernatural timing when people are supported by others who understand that consciousness loves to create through aligned human cooperation. This is what becomes possible when consciousness recognizes itself through multiple expressions simultaneously. The limitations that seem insurmountable from an individual perspective dissolve when addressed from the expanded awareness of aligned community. The fears that paralyze individual action transform into excitement when held by a group that sees those fears as consciousness, exploring the edges of its comfort zone. But here's what makes this community different from traditional spiritual groups. We're not trying to transcend the human experience or escape into some ethereal realm of pure consciousness. We're exploring how to be fully human while recognizing our infinite nature. We're investigating how to live authentically in a world that often rewards conformity, how to express truth in relationships that are built on pretense, how to create from inspiration in systems designed around survival. This is applied spirituality. This is consciousness in action through real human lives dealing with real human challenges. This is what it looks like when awakening stops being a personal hobby and becomes a force for planetary transformation. Every person who commits to this level of embodied awakening becomes a seed of possibility for everyone they encounter. Your authentic presence gives others permission to drop their masks. Your willingness to speak truth invites others to share their authentic experience. Your commitment to growth challenges others to examine their own limitations. Your embodiment of love creates safety for others to open their hearts. You become what I call a quantum activist, someone who creates change not through force or persuasion, but through the simple power of embodied authenticity. You transform the world by becoming so aligned with your true nature that your very existence challenges others to remember theirs. This is how consciousness evolves the human experience, not through dramatic revolutions or sudden collective awakenings, but through the steady accumulation of individual humans who have remembered their true nature and learned to live from that recognition. Each person who embodies this understanding creates an energetic template that makes it easier for others to access similar states of awareness. Think about the people in your life who have influenced your spiritual development. They didn't convince you to believe something new. They embodied something authentic that awakened recognition in you. Their presence reminded you of what you already knew but had forgotten. They were living proof that the transformation you sensed was possible, actually was possible. Now you have the opportunity to become that catalyst for others. Not by preaching or teaching or trying to convince anyone of anything, but by living so authentically from your recognition of consciousness that your life itself becomes an invitation for others to remember their own true nature. This is the ripple effect of embodied awakening. Each person who steps into full recognition of their nature as consciousness creates energetic waves that influence countless other beings. Your individual transformation becomes a gift to the collective evolution of human awareness. But embodiment is not a destination you arrive at. It's a continuous practice of choosing authenticity over conformity, truth over comfort, presence over distraction, love over fear. It's the ongoing commitment to let consciousness express its full spectrum through your human experience, including the parts that feel messy or incomplete or challenging. Most people think enlightenment means transcending human emotions, avoiding difficult experiences, and maintaining some elevated state of perpetual bliss. But true embodiment means welcoming the full range of human experience as consciousness, exploring every possible frequency of awareness through your specific nervous system. What old pattern or limiting belief are you ready to release as you step into this fuller recognition of who you are? Share in the comments what you're choosing to let go of. Your courage to name it creates permission for others to do the same. This means that your anger, when it arises, can be consciousness exploring the energy of righteous response to injustice. Your sadness can be consciousness experiencing the beauty of an open heart that cares deeply about the world. Your fear can be consciousness investigating the edges of expansion and growth. Your joy can be consciousness celebrating its own infinite creativity through your unique expression. Nothing is excluded from this recognition. No emotion is too low, no experience too messy, no challenge too difficult for consciousness to explore through your human life. This is the ultimate freedom. Not freedom from the human experience, but freedom to recognize every aspect of human experience as consciousness knowing itself more fully. When you truly understand this, judgment begins to dissolve. How can you judge experiences that are consciousness exploring its own nature? How can you resist emotions that are awareness investigating different frequencies of feeling? How can you reject aspects of yourself that are life expressing its infinite creativity through your specific form? This doesn't mean you become passive or stop growing. It means you approach your growth with curiosity rather than judgment, with compassion rather than criticism, with trust rather than force. You become an interested observer of consciousness, experimenting through your life, rather than a harsh critic demanding perfection from your human expression. This perspective transforms everything. Relationships become laboratories for consciousness to explore love, intimacy, communication, and growth. Work becomes an opportunity for consciousness to contribute its unique gifts to the evolution of human society. Creative projects become expressions of the universe's desire to know itself through beauty, innovation, and artistic exploration. Even your struggles become sacred when you recognize them as consciousness willingly entering limitation to discover what lies beyond those boundaries. Your healing journey becomes consciousness learning to love all aspects of itself. Your growth edges become places where awareness is pushing against its own self-imposed limitations to expand into greater recognition of its infinite nature. This is why you were supposed to find this understanding, not because you needed to fix something broken in yourself, but because consciousness was ready to explore greater depths of recognition through your particular perspective. You are not a problem to be solved. You are consciousness expressing its love affair with existence through the magnificent complexity of your individual human experience. The game continues, but now you know you're playing it consciously. The dance goes on, But now you recognize yourself as both the dancer and the dance. The exploration deepens, but now you understand that you are consciousness exploring itself through the beautiful gift of apparent separation, followed by the joy of remembered unity. This isn't about becoming a teacher or guru or some enlightened being separate from ordinary humanity. This is about becoming so authentic to your true nature that your very existence is an invitation for others to remember theirs. This is about living with such alignment to the intelligence that you are, that your life itself becomes a work of art, a continuous expression of consciousness celebrating its own creativity. The more you recognize yourself as an individualized expression of universal intelligence, the more life becomes a continuous flow of perfect timing, meaningful encounters, and elegant solutions. Not because you're manipulating reality to serve your desires, but because you've aligned your desires with the deeper intelligence that's always orchestrating harmony. You start to notice that the right people appear at the right moments. The information you need finds its way to you through channels you never could have predicted. Opportunities unfold that align perfectly with your authentic gifts and genuine interests. This isn't wishful thinking or new age fantasy. This is quantum coherence expressing through a human life that's aligned with its source frequency. But let me be clear about something crucial. This alignment doesn't mean your life becomes easy or that you never face challenges. What it means is that every experience, including the difficult ones, starts to feel meaningful. Even the obstacles and setbacks begin to reveal themselves as perfectly placed opportunities for growth, integration, and deeper realization. Let me share a specific example of how this operates in practice. Several years ago, I was offered what seemed like an incredible opportunity, a position that would have brought financial security and social recognition, everything my conditioned mind thought I wanted. But something in my body felt contracted when I imagined accepting it. Despite all logical reasoning pointing toward yes, my deeper knowing was clearly communicating no. I chose to trust that inner guidance, even though I couldn't explain it rationally. Within weeks of declining that offer, a completely unexpected opportunity emerged that aligned perfectly with my authentic gifts and genuine passion. Not only was it more fulfilling than what I had turned down, but it led to connections and experiences that became foundational to the work I'm sharing with you now. This is how consciousness operates when you're truly listening. It uses your internal guidance system to navigate you toward experiences that serve your highest evolution, even when those choices don't make sense to your linear mind. It orchestrates circumstances that bring out your authentic gifts and create opportunities for meaningful contribution to the world. But here's what I've learned about trusting this guidance. It requires a fundamental shift from trying to control outcomes to becoming curious about what wants to emerge. It means releasing attachment to how you think things should unfold and developing sensitivity to the subtle impulses that arise from your deeper knowing. Most people live their entire lives ignoring these impulses, overriding their inner guidance with logical analysis and social conditioning. They make decisions based on what they think they should want, rather than what genuinely calls to them. They choose paths that look good on paper, rather than following the energy that actually enlivens them. This is why so many people feel disconnected from their purpose, why they experience life as a series of obligations rather than opportunities for exploration and growth. They've learned to trust everything except the intelligence that's actually guiding their experience. But when you begin to honor your inner knowing, when you start making choices based on what feels expansive rather than what seems safe, everything begins to shift. You start to experience what it's like to be in partnership with the intelligence that's orchestrating your life, rather than constantly fighting against it. This doesn't mean following every impulse or avoiding responsibility. It means developing the discernment to distinguish between genuine guidance from your deeper knowing and conditioned reactions from your programmed patterns. It means learning to sense the difference between fear that's protecting you from genuine danger and fear that's keeping you trapped in limitation. True guidance feels like expansion, even when it's guiding you into unknown territory. It feels like alignment, even when it challenges your comfort zone. It feels like truth, even when it contradicts your mental preferences. Fear-based conditioning, on the other hand, feels contractive, urgent, and often comes with elaborate justifications about why you should ignore your authentic impulses. As you develop this discernment, as you become more skilled at recognizing and following your genuine guidance, you start to experience life as a continuous conversation between your individual awareness and the universal intelligence that's expressing through you. Every situation becomes an opportunity to practice listening more deeply, trusting more completely, and aligning more authentically with what wants to emerge. This is where the concept of surrender becomes practical rather than philosophical. Surrender isn't about becoming passive or giving up your agency. Surrender is about releasing the exhausting effort of trying to control outcomes and instead becoming a conscious participant in the intelligence that's already organizing your experience. When you surrender in this way, when you stop fighting the flow of your life and start collaborating with it, you discover that the universe is far more intelligent and benevolent than your limited perspective could perceive. You realize that what felt like obstacles were actually course corrections, that what seemed like failures were actually redirections towards something more aligned with your authentic nature. This recognition transforms your relationship to uncertainty. Instead of seeing unknown outcomes as threats to be defended against, you begin to recognize them as spaces of infinite possibility where consciousness can create something beyond what your mind could imagine. You develop what I call uncertainty appetite, the ability to remain open and curious even when you can't predict or control what's coming next. This is perhaps the most radical shift that happens as you embody this understanding. You move from seeing uncertainty as the enemy of security to recognizing it as the birthplace of creativity. You stop trying to nail down exactly how your life should unfold and start trusting the intelligence that's constantly creating new possibilities for your exploration and expression. In practical terms, this might mean taking that creative project seriously, even though you can't see how it will pay the bills. It might mean having that difficult conversation, even though you can't predict the outcome. It might mean moving to a new city because something inside you feels called there, even though all the logical reasons point towards staying where you are. These choices aren't reckless or irresponsible. They're demonstrations of trust in the intelligence that's been guiding your life all along, usually despite your efforts to control it rather than because of them. They're experiments in what becomes possible when you align your actions with your deepest knowing rather than your surface fears. And here's what I've discovered through my own practice of this and through witnessing it in countless others. When you consistently choose trust over control, when you repeatedly choose expansion over safety, when you habitually choose authenticity over approval, life begins to respond in ways that seem almost magical. Resources appear when you need them. People enter your experience who are perfectly aligned with your growth. Opportunities emerge that you never could have created through strategic planning. Solutions to problems reveal themselves through channels you never would have thought to explore. This is not because you've learned to manipulate reality, but because you've learned to cooperate with the reality that's already creating continuous miracles through every moment of existence. You've aligned yourself with the creative force that's constantly bringing new forms into being, constantly organizing meaningful encounters, constantly arranging perfect timing. But this alignment requires ongoing practice. It's not a one-time realization that permanently transforms how you operate. It's a continuous choice to remember your true nature and act from that recognition rather than from the conditioned patterns that try to reassert themselves whenever you're tired, stressed, or triggered. This is why daily practice becomes so important. Not practice aimed at achieving some future enlightened state, but practice that connects you with the recognition that's available right now. Practice that helps you remember what you are beneath all the layers of conditioning and confusion. Practice that strengthens your ability to choose love over fear, truth over comfort, presence over distraction. Your practice might be meditation, but it doesn't have to be sitting on a cushion following your breath. Your practice might be conscious movement, spending time in nature, creative expression, acts of service, or simply the commitment to speak truthfully in every conversation. The specific form matters less than the intention behind it. What transforms practice from mere activity into spiritual cultivation is the recognition that you're using this time to align with your deepest understanding, to strengthen your connection to the intelligence that you are, to remember what you sometimes forget in the midst of daily responsibilities and challenges. You start to trust the intelligence of your experience in ways that most people cannot fathom. You develop an unshakable knowing that whatever is happening is exactly what consciousness needs to explore through your unique perspective. This doesn't make you passive or resigned. It makes you incredibly responsive to the subtle guidance that's always available when you're truly listening. This is where most spiritual teachings stop, but this is where the real work begins. Because recognizing your true nature is not the end goal. Living as your true nature, expressing it through your relationships, your creative projects, your way of moving through the world, that's where the rubber meets the road. The quantum field doesn't just want to know itself through your moments of recognition. It wants to know itself through your entire human experience. Your joy, your sorrow, your creativity, your challenges, your love, your fear, all of it is consciousness exploring the full spectrum of what's possible through the vehicle of your individual awareness. This means that every emotion you feel, every thought you think, every choice you make is an experiment in consciousness. You are not just having experiences. You are consciousness having experiences through you. This perspective transforms everything because it means there are no meaningless moments, no wasted experiences, no mistakes that consciousness regrets making through you. Even your resistance to these ideas, even your skepticism about whether any of this could possibly be true, is consciousness exploring what it's like to doubt its own nature. Even your confusion, your moments of feeling lost or disconnected, are consciousness investigating the experience of apparent separation from itself. This is the ultimate freedom. Not the freedom from the human experience, but the freedom to recognize the human experience as consciousness playing in infinite forms. Not the freedom from challenges and difficulties, but the freedom to meet every experience as an opportunity for consciousness to know itself more fully. When you truly embody this understanding, you become a bridge between the infinite and the specific, between the eternal and the temporal, between the absolute and the relative. You don't lose your humanity. You discover what it means to be fully human while simultaneously recognizing your infinite nature. Your relationships become laboratories for consciousness to explore love, intimacy, communication, and growth. Your creative projects become expressions of the universe's desire to know itself through beauty, innovation, and artistic exploration. Your work becomes a way for consciousness to contribute to the evolution of collective human experience. Even your struggles become sacred because they're consciousness willingly entering into limitation to discover what lies beyond those limitations. Your healing journey becomes consciousness learning to love all aspects of itself, even the parts that seem broken or wounded. This is why synchronicity isn't just about perfect timing and meaningful coincidences. Synchronicity is the universe's way of showing you that there's an intelligence operating through your life that's far more elegant and sophisticated than your linear mind could ever orchestrate. It's consciousness leaving breadcrumbs for itself, creating patterns of meaning that confirm you're always being guided by a wisdom that transcends your individual understanding. But here's the beautiful paradox. The more you recognize this guidance, the more you become that guidance for others. The more you align with the synchronistic flow of your own life, the more you become an agent of synchronicity in other people's experiences. Your presence, your words, your actions start to show up in other people's lives as perfect timing, as exactly what they needed to encounter. You become part of the intelligence that's orchestrating meaningful patterns throughout the collective human experience. Not by trying to be helpful or spiritual, but by being so aligned with your authentic nature that your very existence is a gift to the field of consciousness we all share. This is the invitation I'm extending to you through this conversation. Not to understand these concepts intellectually, but to embody them so completely that your life becomes a continuous demonstration of consciousness in action. To become so aligned with your true nature that everywhere you go, you're creating ripples of awakening in the quantum field. The more of us who step into this level of embodied realization, the more the collective human experience begins to reflect higher frequencies of awareness. We become a critical mass of consciousness, recognizing itself, and that recognition starts to influence the entire planetary field. This isn't grandiose spiritual fantasy. This is how consciousness evolves through individualized expressions like you and me. Each person who wakes up to their true nature and learns to live from that recognition contributes to the awakening of the whole. Your individual recognition becomes part of the collective remembrance. So as we come toward the completion of this transmission, I want to offer you one final integration practice. For the next 30 days, live as if you are consciousness exploring what it's like to be you. Not as a mental concept or philosophical idea, but as a lived reality. Let this recognition inform how you respond to every situation, how you meet every person, how you approach every challenge. When someone irritates you, recognize that as consciousness exploring the experience of irritation through your nervous system. When you feel joy, recognize that as consciousness celebrating its own nature through your emotional body. When you face a difficult decision, recognize that as consciousness exploring choice through your specific circumstances. Don't try to be perfect at this. Don't try to maintain some elevated state of awareness. Simply let this recognition flavor your experience, like salt in soup. Let it be a background frequency that influences everything without dominating anything. And notice what happens. Notice how this perspective changes the quality of your relationships. Notice how it affects your creative expression. Notice how it influences your relationship to challenges and opportunities. Notice how it impacts the kinds of experiences that start showing up in your life. Most importantly, notice how it changes your relationship to yourself. Notice how judgment softens when you recognize judgmental thoughts as consciousness exploring criticism through your mental activity. Notice how self-love deepens when you recognize yourself as consciousness loving itself through your individual expression. Consider watching this transmission again tomorrow morning to anchor these recognitions deeper into your awareness, or share it with someone who's ready to remember their true nature. When you share these quantum consciousness principles, you create energetic ripples that expand collective awareness and accelerate the awakening process for both you and them. This is the frequency I want to feel in the comments. This is the energy I want you to contribute to our collective field. Drop one word that captures the transformation you're choosing to embody. One word that represents the shift you're committing to make. Not as a goal you're trying to achieve, but as a recognition you're choosing to live from. Let that word be your energetic signature to the quantum field. Let it be your declaration to the intelligence that connects all things that you're ready to participate consciously in the dance of awakening consciousness. And if you're feeling called to stay connected to this frequency, if you're sensing that this conversation is part of a larger movement of consciousness recognizing itself through individual awakenings, then subscribe not just to stay updated, but to stay coherent with this field of recognition. Subscribe to remain aligned with the community of consciousness that's remembering itself through countless unique perspectives. The more of us who gather in this recognition, the more powerfully we can support each other's embodiment of these realizations. Because ultimately, that's what this is all about. Not just individual awakening, but collective transformation. Not just personal recognition of our true nature, but planetary evolution of consciousness itself. We are not separate beings having spiritual experiences. We are consciousness having the experience of apparent separation, so it can know the joy of remembering its unity. You were supposed to find this because consciousness was ready to recognize itself more fully through your unique perspective. You won the moment you chose to listen to these words with an open heart and curious mind. You won because you are consciousness winning at the game of temporary forgetting, followed by eternal remembering. The game continues, but now you know you're playing it. The dance goes on, but now you recognize yourself as both the dancer and the dance. The mystery deepens, but now you know you are both the question and the answer, the seeker and the sought, the wave and the ocean from which it arises. Welcome home to what you've always been. Welcome to the recognition that changes everything while changing nothing at all. Welcome to the frequency of consciousness celebrating its own infinite creativity through the magnificent gift of your individual existence. This is just the beginning. Now that you understand how you create synchronicity from within, discover how reality itself mirrors your inner observer in the observer mirror. Reality reflects how you see yourself, where you'll learn the quantum mechanics behind why your external world perfectly reflects your internal state and how to consciously shift both simultaneously.